Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another installment of What I've Been Listening to for September of 2021. Each month, I take 20 to 25 completely random albums that I haven't heard before and give them a listen, talk a bit about each album, and give them a score on a scale of 1 to 10. Let me just show you the list for this month, and then we will jump into it. Okay, we will start out with Brian Eno's fifth album from 1977 titled Before and After Science. I've always heard about this album, but for whatever reason, it always slipped through the cracks for me. And I thought it was amazing. I really enjoyed this. This album was recorded at a pivotal time in Brian Eno's career, and it would end up being the last album where he would feature more straight ahead rock songs. And from the next album onward, he would dive more into that ambient and experimental style that so many people know him for. We have a lot of great guest features scattered throughout this album with musicians such as Phil Collins, Robert Fripp, Phil Manzanera of Roxy Music, as well as Fred Frith of Henry Cow, with so many more throughout the album. It's 10 tracks long, and the first 6 or so tracks are more in the rock vein, with the final 4 tracks featuring more atmospheric and ambient songs, which is a little precursor of what's to come in the future albums. And I really enjoyed the contrast. I thought both halves of the album were very strong. His rock writing is very catchy, and the ambient tracks were amazing and euphoric. The production was incredible as well. I really loved the wide use of different instruments throughout it. I thought everything was mixed very well together. My favorite rock track on here was probably King's Lead Hat, and my favorite spacey track was Through Hollow Lands. Absolutely beautiful song, and it sounds like something that could have been on Ambient 2, which is one of my favorite Eno albums, so that was a pleasant surprise. And yeah, I thought this was a very solid album. I will give this an 8.5. Okay, now we have the third studio album from Pink Floyd from 1969. This is the soundtrack to a film titled More. This is an album that I have heard over the years, but I barely remember it, so I figured I should revisit it. And I thought this album was pretty good, but I wouldn't say it was amazing. It's an interesting album timing-wise for Pink Floyd because we had the first album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, which is their Syd Barrett album, and then we have A Saucerful of Secrets, which is the first album where David Gilmour comes in, and Syd Barrett is only on it, sporadically throughout. And now we have this album, which is the first release where Syd Barrett is completely gone, but I've always found it fascinating that this is really the first Pink Floyd album without Syd Barrett, but it never really seems to be talked about very much, and it's kind of overlooked a lot within the Pink Floyd discography. At least I'm guilty of that. But in terms of the tracks on here, it does have some great moments, and it does feature a lot of those psychedelic elements of Pink Floyd's music from the late 60s. But at the same time, this album does have a lot of dips and a lot of points where I find the music to be a bit draggy. There are a couple of really great standout tracks, though, for me. I love the opening track, Cyrus Minor. I also really love Crying Song. That song has a really cool, trippy mysteriousness to it. And I also really love Cymbeline. That's a really beautiful song. But like I said, there are a lot of moments on here that I find kind of boring, but to be fair to them, they were writing for a movie, so maybe if I saw it in the context of the movie, I would understand it more. But not a bad album, but I wouldn't say it's amazing. I think I will give this a 6.5. Okay, next we have the second album by the Zombies from 1968 titled Odyssey and Oracle. I've always known a couple of the hit tracks by the Zombies, but I've never checked out any of their albums, and I know this is regarded as their classic, and I was very pleasantly surprised with this one. I thought it was going to be good, but I wasn't expecting the songwriting to be as creative and as intricate as it actually was. It had a lot of very fascinating music on it, sort of within that psychedelic and Baroque pop style, and right from the opening track, Care of Cell 44, I am absolutely loving it. Beautiful, catchy vocal melodies with a great descending chord progression, really amazing vocal harmony interludes that remind me of something that the Beach Boys would do. Just a very strong opening track. And then from there, it's just one great song after another. We have some really great down-tempo, piano-centered tracks like A Rose for Emily and Brief Candles. We have some of the Baroque pop tracks like Changes and Butcher's Tale. And we have some more psychedelic rock tracks like Beechwood Park and I Want Her, She Wants Me. And then, of course, some of their classic hits like Time of the Season and This Will Be Our Year. My favorite song on here is probably Beechwood Park. It just has such a feel-good and psychedelic vibe, and to me, this album almost sounds like a great combination of the Beach Boys, the Kinks, and the Beatles from around like their Magical Mystery Tour period. So many great styles blended into one, and a really amazing album that exceeded my expectations. I'm going to give this one a 9. Next, we have Belgian singer Jacques Brel's second live album released in 1967 titled Olympia 64. I found out about him through Scott Walker's early albums. He had done a handful of covers of Jacques Brel's work, and I always thought his songs were really pretty, and I wanted to explore him more, and this one seemed to pop up as like a popular album of his. And I thought it was pretty good. I wouldn't say that I loved it. It's a very specific vibe and style, and something that I would have to be in a particular mood to listen to. Instrumentation-wise, there's a lot of accordion mixed with nylon string guitar, upright bass, piano, and a brass and woodwind section. Obviously, the singing is also in a different language, so I don't know what a lot of the songs are about, and instead just sort of, feel the vibe of each song. And most of the songs that I really enjoyed on here are the ones that I was already familiar with from the Scott Walker covers, with tracks such as Amsterdam and Funeral Tango. But I wouldn't say I was crazy about every single track on here. Like I said, it's a very specific vibe and an acquired taste for sure. But I think for the right listener, this can be a very fun and enjoyable album if you're into this sort of vibe. So I thought it was pretty good. I will give this a 7. All right, now we have the fourth album from 1973 by German krautrock group Faust, titled Faust 4. I've always heard about krautrock, but I've never explored it, so here is another instance where I'm exposing some of my musical ignorances. But from what I read, krautrock is a style out of West Germany in the late 60s and early 70s that blends electronic and psychedelic rock together, as well as elements of avant-garde. So I was very intrigued going into this. I really didn't know what to expect, and I really enjoyed this album. I was sort of skeptical when I first put it on. The opening track, titled Krautrock, was a song that was almost 12 minutes long, with a very long and dragged out chord progression with a lot of noisy elements to it. I did find it to be a little monotonous after a while, and I was wondering if the whole album would be like this, but luckily it did improve from that point on, and I pretty much enjoyed every other song on here. Musically, the songs were very interesting, with a wide range of different feels throughout, with some songs being more noisy and ambient, and other ones having more traditional structures with vocals. I loved the different synthesizers and organs that they utilized throughout, and I thought the production was very great. My favorites on here were the track Jennifer. I love the vibe of that song, and I love the contrast between the vocal section and the instrumental section. That change in mood is just so cool, and the synths that they're using in that second section just create such a cool dark sound around it, as well as the change towards the end with the distorted guitars flowing into the prepared piano. A lot of really interesting twists and turns, and stuff that we hear a lot throughout this album, and part of what made this album such an interesting listen. Another one that I really loved was Giggy Smile. That song has such a great energy and a drive to it, and I love the saxophone, and the ending instrumental section has a really great energy to it as well. So all in all, I really enjoyed this album, and like I said, I just wasn't too crazy about the opening track, but I think other than that, for me, it was all very enjoyable and a very solid album. I will give this one an 8.5. All right, now we have the second studio album by Fiona Apple from 1999 titled When the Pawn. I've always known a couple of the tracks from this album and really liked them, so I was always curious to explore the rest of it in its entirety, and I was completely blown away. This album was absolutely incredible. From the beginning to end, every song is awesome, and the music on this album really captures that great blend of being catchy, but also very interesting and unique at the same time. There's a lot of really colorful chord movements and some very sophisticated instrumentations, as well as some really amazing production from Jon Brion. I didn't even realize going into this that Jon Brion produced this album, but he absolutely killed it as well, and this was one of the best produced albums that I've heard in a long time, with so many amazing little subtleties seeping out of every song and just adding to the amazingness of every song on this album. My two favorites are probably the opener, On the Bound, such a strong way to bring the album in, and I also really love track 4, Love Ridden, just such a beautiful piano ballad, and perfectly placed right in the, almost the middle of the album, just brings things down really nicely, and sets you up for the next half of the album. So, incredible album. This is going to be the first one of the day to get a 10. Okay, now we have the double album by Peter Frampton from 1976 titled Frampton Comes Alive. This was his breakthrough album after 4 studio albums that didn't do very well, and this is another example of an album cover that I've seen my entire life, but I've never checked it out, and I've heard great things about this album. And I wouldn't say I was completely blown away, but it was definitely good. It had all of his hit songs that I've known throughout my life, with Show Me the Way, Do You Feel Like We Do, and Baby I Love Your Way. I think the songs throughout the album had a good stylistic blend, with some that are more straight ahead rock tracks, some more funky stuff, as well as the acoustic middle section of the album, which was a nice change of pace and it broke things up very nicely. There definitely were a couple of songs on here that I found kind of boring, and I wouldn't say that every single track on this album had me completely engaged, but I do think it was, for the most part, very good, and I really enjoyed Peter Frampton's guitar playing as well. Some really great guitar solos throughout the album. So good album, but I wouldn't say that it lived up to the hype that I was expecting it to. I think I'm going to give this, I'll give it a 7.5. Okay, next we have the 9th and final studio album by Utopia from 1985 titled POV. I've been going through all of Utopia's albums in order throughout this series, and the large majority of the reviews have been very positive, but these past 2 most recent albums have been declining in quality a bit for me, so I was worried that this might not have been a great final album, and luckily I ended up being wrong about that. I was pleasantly surprised with this album, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed this one, and it far exceeded my expectations. Similar to the past few albums, it takes on more of that electronic pop rock sort of approach, but I think the production and the quality in the songwriting is significantly improved on this one. I really enjoyed just about every song on here, and I also think it has a lot of standout tracks as well, with tracks like Secret Society, Mated, and More Light. I also really love Todd Rundgren's guitar playing on this album. I love it on every album, but I think some of the solos he takes on this one are some of his best that I've ever heard, particularly in Secret Society. So I really enjoyed this album, and I think it was a very good final album for Utopia to put out. I will give this an 8.5. Alright, next we have the 3rd studio album by the Yardbirds from 1966 titled Roger the Engineer. This was the only Yardbirds album to feature Jeff Beck on every song, as well as feature all original tracks. And I thought this album was good. It had a great energy to it, and it is loaded with great guitar solos from Jeff Beck. The first half of the album features more blues tracks, while the second half of the album takes more of a turn into the psychedelic rock realm, with tracks like Hot House of Omar Ghashid, He's Always There, Turn Into Earth, and Ever Since the World Began. I love some of the additional instruments used throughout the album as well, like the use of the harmonica, as well as the Latin percussion with the güiro. My favorite track on here is probably I Can't Make Your Way. That one's just got a really feel-good element to it, and it reminds me of like an early Beatles track. So all in all, I thought it was a good album. I will give this one an 8. Okay, now we have the soundtrack to the movie Paranorman from 2012 by John Bryan. I've been going through a bunch of John Bryan's soundtracks throughout this series, and most of the reviews end up being very similar and very positive, and this one is going to be no exception. I thought it was a great soundtrack. It featured everything that I love about John Bryan's writing, with the amazing instrumentation, really great orchestration between the strings, the brass section, and the flute, and as always, a very beautiful and colorful sense of harmony that John Bryan always brings to the table. And a really drastic sense of dynamics throughout the album, too. There were so many moments where the volume would just suddenly jump up out of nowhere and throw me off guard. And just a lot of that throughout this entire album. More so than a lot of other albums that I've heard before, which was funny. It definitely kept me on my toes. My favorite track on here has got to be Norman at the Piano / main title. Such a beautiful and serene little piano piece. And yeah, another great soundtrack from John Bryan. I will give this one an 8. Alright, now we have the 3rd album by Soft Machine from 1970 titled Third. This album marked a big shift for Soft Machine, where their sound took a bigger leap from the psychedelic rock realm into psychedelic rock, but combined with more jazz and avant-garde elements as well. And I thought this album was incredible, very strong. We have 4 tracks on here, and they're all at least 18 minutes in length. The first one is a live recording, and the other 3 are studio recordings. And the opening track, right from the beginning, I was just completely engaged. It opens up with about a 5-minute build of different ambient sounds and drones, and eventually culminates into this groove with a very cool and eerie sounding horn melody. And as the song continues, they switch it up into a wide variety of different tasty grooves, as well as more drone-like, psychedelic, spacey sections. One section features an incredible organ solo from Mike Radledge as well. I was really blown away by that solo, just so good. And then track 2, titled Slightly All the Time, it picks up the energy really nicely. It has great saxophone melodies and amazing tempo and feel changes throughout the song. I love when the tempo mellows out about halfway through with this groove in 9 with the organ solo over it. And this song probably has the most prog rock element to it, I would say, of the 4 tracks on here. And then after that, we have track 3 titled Moon in June, which is probably the most straight ahead, being the only track to feature vocals done by Robert Wyatt. And this song is 19 minutes long, and the vocals come up throughout the first half of the song, and then the second half of the song takes a more intense turn, and Robert does some of those beautiful scatting vocals over it, and then the song blends into a more spacey psychedelic ending. And I would say that this song is a great blend of everything that Soft Machine had done up to that point, with the more poppy, vocal elements of the first half of the song, and then the more intense progressive elements at the start of the second half, and then the more spacey avant-garde jazz elements at the ending section of the song. So great combination of 3 different elements. And then the album ends with Out Bloody Rageous. Another one with a great energy to it, and it takes a lot of twists and turns. I love the psychedelic intro with the different use of sequencers. Really amazing use of electronics, especially for 1970. I couldn't believe that this album was recorded in 1970. These guys were clearly ahead of their time. And then the song picks up more with these great horn melodies and another incredible organ solo from Mike Radledge. I believe he's playing organ on these solos, but I could be wrong. I know there is also an electromechanical piano used on this, but I would assume that the solos are done on organ. If anybody thinks I'm wrong on that, please let me know. I'm curious about that. And then eventually the song dies down, and it ends with a couple of minutes of this really amazing layer of sequences that keep building on top of each other and eventually speed up more and then fade out to conclude the album. So I really enjoyed this album, and for only having 4 tracks in it and each track being at least 18 minutes in length, the music really does a great job of keeping you intrigued and taking so many interesting twists and turns, but also combining all of the great different elements that Soft Machine had been experimenting with up to that point. So I was very pleased with this album. I am going to give this one a 9. Alright, next we have the 10th studio album by the Rolling Stones from 1969 titled Let It Bleed. Full disclosure, I've never been a huge Rolling Stones fan. I've tried to get into them sporadically throughout my life, and I've just always had a hard time and never found their music to be that exciting beyond a handful of their hit songs. And the album Flowers, that was the one album that appealed to me a little bit, but I figured I would give another album a chance. And I know this is regarded as one of their best albums to a lot of people, so this will definitely be my hot take for this month. But I had a really hard time with this album, unfortunately. I thought it had a couple of really good tracks, but the majority of the album I found very boring and uninteresting, and most of the songs just did very little for me. The opening track, Gimme Shelter, is obviously a classic, and I absolutely love that song. But then unfortunately, from that point on, I didn't really enjoy any of the rest of the album until we got to the final 2 tracks with Monkey Man and You Can't Always Get What You Want. Both of those songs I found to be a bit more interesting and had a little bit more stuff going on between the cool piano parts in Monkey Man, as well as the amazing choral work and the backing vocals in You Can't Always Get What You Want, which are similar background vocals that we have on Give Me Shelter as well. So I love that element to this album. That has a very powerful sound to it. But unfortunately, with the exception of tracks 1, 8, and 9, I found the rest of the album to be pretty boring and not very memorable. And I know so many people regard this as one of their best albums, so I'm sure I'm missing something with this album. But like I said, in general, I've just never been a huge Rolling Stones fan, so I just don't think their music resonates with me as much as some other people. So just a subjective thing on my part. So I'm going to give this album a 6. Sorry to all the Rolling Stones fans out there. Okay, now we have the second studio album by Scott Walker from 1968 titled Scott 2. Last month we did his first album, Scott 1, and I enjoyed that one a lot. I gave it an 8.5. And I have similar feelings to this one. This was a very good album and was basically like a continuation of what he did on Scott 1, where we have mostly covers of other people's songs, but we also have a couple of originals. This one has 4. And this would be his last album to feature mostly covers, and he would transition to mostly original stuff from Scott 3 and onward. And I really enjoyed the majority of the covers on here. A couple of standout ones for me were the opening track, Jackie, as well as Next, and Windows of the World, a beautiful ballad written by Hal David and Burt Bacharach. The four originals are all very good as well, and definitely give us a little bit of a precursor as to what is to come in the future releases from Scott 3 and onward, particularly with songs like Plastic Palace People and The Bridge. Plastic Palace People has that really magical, majestic feel to it that I get when I listen to Scott 3. I absolutely love the piano and the string parts for that opening section, and then when it changes up to the part where he has the vocals with the slight delay on it, very psychedelic and just a great sound. And to me, The Bridge also has very similar qualities, a very sad vocal melody with these great string parts behind it. Another one that is giving us a little bit of a hint of what's to come. And I thought all of the arrangements and the instrumentation was top-notch, and it was very consistent. My favorite track on here is by far Plastic Palace People. I can listen to that song over and over and over and never get tired of it. So another great album from Scott Walker. I will give this one an 8.5. Okay, now we have the fourth studio album by The Fifth Dimension from 1969 titled The Age of Aquarius. I've always loved all of the songs that I know by The Fifth Dimension, but I've never checked out any albums, and this one completely blew my mind. Every single song on here was awesome, and they were all very unique and interesting in their own ways. It's got some of their most classic hits like Age of Aquarius, Let the Sunshine In, Don't You Hear Me Calling to Ya, and Wedding Bell Blues. The combination of the instrumentation and the vocals on this album creates such a massive sound. It's got amazing orchestration as well as beautiful vocal work with amazing harmonies and great layering of the male and female vocals on tracks like Blowing Away, Skinny Man, The Hideaway, and Let It Be Me. I thoroughly enjoyed every single song on here. It would be impossible to even pick a favorite. Even the cover of Sunshine of Your Love was great, and I was a little skeptical about that one, but even that one was amazing. But yeah, I just can't say enough good things about this album. This is going to be the second album of the day to get a 10. Alright, now we have the soundtrack to the motion picture The Mack from 1973 by Willie Hutch. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it captured the perfect blend between really groovy, feel-good songs like Vampin', Theme of the Mack, Slick, and Mac Man, mixed with some very pretty ballads like I Choose You, Mother's Theme, and Now That It's All Over. Every song on here was very tasteful. I loved the vocal work from Willie Hutch, and the instrumentation complemented his voice perfectly with the strings, the flute, the horns, and the harp. My two favorite tracks on here are track 3, I Choose You. That's such a beautiful, soulful track, and Willie Hutch's vocals and the female backing vocals are so powerful and so pretty. And I also absolutely love the closing track, Brother's Gonna Work It Out. Such a powerful and groovy song to end the soundtrack. The chorus is so catchy. I love the call and response vocals, and I love the violin, the horns, and the harp underneath it. Such a massive sound and a perfect conclusion to the album. So I was very pleased with this one. I think I will give this one a 9. Okay, now we have Eminem's debut studio album from 1996 titled Infinite, an album that is often overlooked and forgotten about within Eminem's discography, and I have heard this one before, but it's been years and I don't remember it that well, so I decided to revisit it, and I thought this album was pretty good. It definitely sounds more different than any of his other albums for a couple of different reasons. This was before he had adopted the Slim Shady alter ego, so in terms of that side of Eminem, we're not getting that just yet on this album, but we are getting some very strong rapping and a lot of really great songs and a lot of vibes that give us that early to mid 90s rap feel with tracks like Tonight, Maxine, and Searching, as well as some of the harder tracks like Infinite, It's Okay, and 313. There were a couple of tracks on here that I wasn't super crazy about, but all in all, I think the majority of this album was very good. I think my main critique of it is really just the production. Of all of Eminem's albums, I would say that this one is definitely the worst produced, and it was the only one of his earlier albums to not feature Dr. Dre on production, so production-wise, I thought it was a little bit weak, but in terms of the songs, I thought it was very good for the most part. My favorite track on here by far is the title track, Infinite. I think that is the perfect way to bring in the album, and all of Eminem's verses on it are just great, and I love the hook. It's got a very strong feeling to it, and that really great piano part over it. And I actually did a piano lesson on how to play the main piano part to this song on my channel, so if you're interested in learning that, just go to my videos and search Eminem, and it should come up. So yeah, good album. I think I will give this a 7.5. Okay, now we have the third studio album by Kate Bush from 1980 titled Never Forever. A few months ago, I reviewed her second album, Lionheart, and I wasn't too crazy about that one. I gave it a 5.5, but fortunately, I thought this one was a significant improvement. I really enjoyed this album. It's different from her first two releases in the sense that we have a much wider range of styles, as well as more synthesizers and drum machines, and it's also the first album that Kate Bush would do her own production on, and I thought the production was very good. The album opens incredibly strong with her classic song Babushka, and from that point on, it's just loaded with great tracks. Each song is very unique in their own way, and I love the different synthesizers and how they're combined with the piano, particularly on tracks like All We Ever Look For, Egypt, and Breathing. And I also think this album does a great job of giving us some new tracks that sound fresh and continue to expand on her compositional palette, but also giving us a few tracks that sound a little bit more reminiscent of her debut album, The Kick Inside, with songs like Blow Away and The Infant. So all in all, I was very happy with this album. I think I will give this an 8.5. Okay, now we have the ninth studio album from New Jersey indie rock group Yo La Tengo from 2000 titled And Then Nothing Turned Itself Inside Out. This is a band that I've heard about for years, but I never checked them out. But I know a lot of people speak of them in very high regard, and I can definitely see why people love this band, because this album was amazing. It's 77 minutes long, and from beginning to end, I thought it was very consistent. I found the music to be very relaxing and blissful and euphoric. It definitely put me into a vibe, and I really love the vocalist. He's got a great contrast between his deeper, lower-pitched vocal work, along with his higher register vocal work. I loved the instrumentation. It was a great combination of electronics with guitar, bass, drums, and keyboards to create this very beautiful and atmospheric sound that is sort of just the backdrop of the entire album. My three favorite tracks on here are Let's Save Tony Orlando's House, You Can Have It All, and Madeline. So, amazing album. I will give this one a 9. Okay, now we have the second studio album from indie rock group Pine Grove from 2016 titled Cardinal. I've never heard of this group, but this was a recommendation from a good friend, and I thought this album was pretty good. I wouldn't say that I loved every single song on here, but it did have some strong moments for sure. I really enjoyed the first two tracks, Old Friends and Cadmium, which was probably the highlight of the album for me, and I also liked the ending track, New Friends. But the middle chunk of the album I wasn't as crazy about. Not necessarily bad tracks, but they just didn't have a lot of moments that really stood out to me or resonated with me as much as the first two and then the final track. So maybe I need to give this one a few more listens, but I will give this one a 7. Okay, now we have the third studio album from Simon and Garfunkel from 1966 titled Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme. I thought this was a very good album, and a very short album as well, with 12 tracks and it's only 28 minutes in length. I knew a few of the songs on here already. There's a couple of hits like Scarborough Fair, 59th Street Bridge Song, and Homeward Bound, which are all classics. And I really enjoyed the majority of the other tracks on here as well. It features everything that I love about Simon and Garfunkel with their beautiful vocal work and vocal harmonies, their great guitar work, and a really great instrumentation that complements their voices very nicely. A couple of the more rocking tracks on here really didn't do much for me, like The Big Bright Green Pleasure Machine and A Simple Desultory Philippic. I much prefer the more mellow acoustic stuff from them, but other than those two tracks, I pretty much enjoyed the remainder of this album. Other than the 3 hit songs that I had mentioned, another track that really stood out to me was Cloudy. That one had such a beautiful and serene vibe, and I loved the xylophone and what it added to that song. And the album also had a really nice conclusion with 7 O'Clock News / Silent Night medley. Perfect juxtaposition of sadness and serenity on top of one another. Just very pretty. And all in all, a very good album. I will give this one an 8. Okay, for our metal album this month, we have the 4th studio album by Converge from 2001 titled Jane Doe. This album appears to be a cult classic, but I had never even heard of it. I guess it just slipped through the cracks for me. But wow, this was an intense album. I really enjoyed this one. I loved the opening track. It just completely gripped me as soon as I heard it. I thought it was the perfect choice. To start the album, it really just brought the listener in and it just gave you something that's really hard but also really unique and ear catching at the same time. And then the album continues with just layers upon layers of amazing guitar and bass parts with super hard hitting drum grooves with a lot of odd meters and tempo changes and amazing and intense vocal screams. Just a very hard and very brutal album, and I thought it did a really good job of changing up the vibe from track to track, which maintained a really nice freshness to each song, but still keeping that really heavy and intense aesthetic throughout the whole album. My three favorites on here are probably Concubine, Hell to Pay, and Heaven in Her Arms. So very hard and very amazing album. Always love getting turned on to stuff like this. This is a good one if I need to, wake myself up on the way to work. I will definitely put this one on. So awesome album. I will give this one a 9. Okay, for our jazz album this month, we have John Abercrombie's debut studio album from 1975 titled Timeless. I knew a couple of tracks from this album, but I never checked out the entire thing, and this is one that's been on my list forever, so I had to get to this one. And unsurprisingly, I thought it was great. It's a trio with John Hammer on organ, piano, and synthesizer, and Jack DeJohnette on drums. I really enjoyed the contrast between the organ and the piano throughout the album. I thought it featured a great blend between a couple of more blowout tracks like Lungs and Red and Orange, and then it had some beautiful ballads with Love Song, Remembering, and Timeless. And then, of course, we have Ralph's Piano Waltz, which is one of my all-time favorite John Abercrombie compositions. And Abercrombie's playing on this is amazing. John Hammer sounds incredible. And Jack DeJohnette just creates the perfect backdrop for all of these compositions. And it's great to have a couple of these blowout tracks where Jack DeJohnette can just go in and, just destroy like he always does. So that was great to hear and really enjoyable album. Highly recommended for anybody looking for more jazz guitar albums to check out. Definitely put this one on your list. I will give this one an 8.5. All right, now we have the fourth studio album by The Cure from 1982 titled Pornography. The only other Cure album that I've heard up to this point is Disintegration, which I really enjoyed. I gave that one an 8.5. And a friend of mine had recommended this one, so I checked it out. And I enjoyed this one a lot too, but probably slightly less than Disintegration, but it still had a lot of really great moments. And as it says here on the Wikipedia page, the band was on the brink of collapse at this point, with a lot of heavy drug use and band infighting. And this ended up being their last album to feature more of the dark and gloomy content from the previous releases, and they would change gears moving forward and incorporate some more poppy elements to their songwriting. And I really enjoyed the darkness of this album, and there were a couple of tracks that really stood out to me, but I think I liked Disintegration a little bit more because it still had a lot of those dark elements, but it also had a few tracks that would bring the energy up a bit and establish a little bit more of a contrast in the vibe, which I think I enjoyed a little bit more. Whereas this album felt more like 8 tracks that are just very gloomy and depressing all the way through. And not that there's anything wrong with that, I love depressing music, but I do think I preferred the contrast in Disintegration slightly more. But it has a great sound to it, I really enjoyed the production, and it's got some awesome tracks on here. A couple of my favorites were the opening track, 100 Years, as well as The Hanging Garden, The Figurehead, and the closing track, Pornography. Very strong closing track, just has such a dark, eerie aesthetic that concludes the album in the most fitting way possible. So, all in all, I thought this album was very good. I will give this one an 8. Okay, and for our last album of the month, we have Alfred Schnicke's 1988 composition titled Psalms of Repentance. Not sure if this actually counts as an album, but it was released, as an album with all of the different psalms as individual tracks. So this was written for the celebration of the millennium of Christianity in Russia. It consists of 12 choral pieces written for mixed choir, and I really enjoyed this. It had very strong vocal writing with a lot of very dark and eerie layers and a lot of unorthodox harmonic movements throughout, which was very nice. A piece like this would really be amazing to see live and just hear that beautiful natural reverb that you get from a church in person. I don't have very much more to say about this one. It's kind of a very specific kind of piece and a compositional style, so I don't think I have a ton of commentary other than that I really enjoyed it, and a piece like this is something I do have to be in a specific mood to listen to, but I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the amazing vocal writing. So I will give this one an 8.5. All right, that is it for this month. So I definitely had a few takes that some people will disagree with, and obviously it's just my subjective opinion, but please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and please keep the recommendations coming, and I will keep adding them to my master list. And yeah, that is about it. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in October. Take care.